Have you ever realized that motivation is a beautifully told lie? It shows up with strength, promises to change your life, and disappears before the first obstacle. That's why so many people start excited and die halfway through. But there's a rare group of people who discovered something beyond motivation, a mental code that makes them unbreakable. They live with purpose, act without hesitation, and build an identity so solid that nothing shakes them. This audiobook isn't about willpower. It's about self-discipline, about the art of acting even when the world pushes you to stop. It's about killing the lazy, weak version of yourself and being reborn as someone who simply does. Here, you'll understand what Zen monks, elite athletes, and the world's most disciplined thinkers have in common: consistency. With each chapter, you'll feel the transformation happening inside you. Because we're not talking about fleeting motivation, but permanent transformation. You'll learn how to eliminate the old you, the one who postpones, hesitates, and doubts, and take full control of your time, your body, and your mind. This isn't for everyone. It's for those tired of being slaves to their own excuses, for those who want to trade emotion for evolution and willpower for purpose. If you're ready to let the old you die and build a version that's unbreakable, disciplined, and immune to failure, then listen to the end. Get ready, because from now on, change will no longer be an option. It will be your new nature. Welcome to the beginning of your transformation. Welcome to the birth of your unbreakable discipline. Most people live believing they need to feel like it, to take action. They wait for that magical spark called motivation, as if it were the key to change. But the real secret isn't about feeling ready. It's about acting even when you don't. Self-discipline is where comfort dies and growth begins. It's in that abyss between wanting and doing that transformation happens. The problem is, few have the courage to cross it. The myth of motivation is seductive because it promises constant excitement. But motivation is like sugar. It gives you a quick rush and vanishes in minutes. What sustains you is consistency, that quiet force that appears when enthusiasm fades. Raphael, like many others, thought he needed to be inspired to change. What he didn't realize was that waiting to be inspired was exactly what kept him stuck. Imagine an athlete who only trains when he's pumped, or a writer who only writes when divine inspiration strikes. They'd never get far. The masters of focus don't rely on daily emotions. They rely on ritual. Focus is what separates amateurs from the committed. And curiously, the more you act without motivation, the more motivation you create, because identity begins to shift. Zen monks discovered this centuries ago through Jyoji, continuous, unbroken practice. No applause, no rush of adrenaline, just constancy. Self-discipline isn't about willpower. It's about removing the inner debate. Should I or shouldn't I? Is never a question. They simply do it, period. That's the difference between acting like a practitioner and being one. Raphael began to see that his inconsistency came from his emotional relationship with action. He depended on mood, caffeine, and motivational quotes. But monks don't need playlists. They have purpose. And purpose doesn't evaporate. When identity changes, the body follows. When you become the kind of person who acts, doubt disappears. People confuse motivation with movement. But the first is emotional, the second is physical. Movement is what reprograms the brain. Each repeated act, done in resistance, strengthens the new identity. That's how transformation happens, not in giant leaps, but in small, consistent steps. Discipline is the invisible cement that builds the new self. Raphael read about neuroplasticity and realized his mental patterns were just habitual neural routes. By repeating disciplined actions, he was literally paving new roads in his brain. Each morning he overcame the 5 more minutes impulse. He reinforced his new self. Self-discipline wasn't punishment anymore. It was a neurological map. Over time, he began to see motivation as a child's toy. Useful to start, useless to continue. What sustained his progress was consistency, that cold, steady energy that doesn't depend on mood. And strangely enough, once you stop needing motivation, life becomes lighter, because the weight of indecision disappears. The monks call this peace in repetition. It's when waking up early, reading, or training stops being a fight and becomes part of who you are. Raphael began to embody this state. He no longer saw himself as someone trying to be disciplined, but as someone who simply is. Identity precedes action, and action reinforces identity, an unbreakable loop. The myth of motivation also makes us worship grand moments and despise routine. But real strength lives in the ordinary days. It's easy to feel powerful at a motivational event. It's hard to keep your focus on a rainy Tuesday. Raphael understood this and began to treat every normal day as mental training ground. That's where the transformation was really happening. He applied it everywhere: health, learning, finances. Instead of waiting for the desire to study, he studied 15 minutes a day, no excuses. Instead of waiting for the urge to save money, he automated his investments. Small actions, big results. Motivation is volatile. Systems are permanent. With this new mindset, Raphael began inspiring friends, unintentionally. While they were listening to productivity podcasts, he was already practicing. While they said, "I'll start Monday," he was already deep in the process. The difference wasn't talent, it was identity. He had replaced "I want to change" with "I am someone who changes." Self-discipline freed him from the tyranny of emotion. It was no longer about feeling. It was about being. That scared people, because living without needing motivation means living without excuses. Consistency became his shield. When people said, "You're lucky to be focused," he smiled. Luck doesn't build routine. Habits build luck. This mindset may seem cold, but it's liberating. Raphael realized the fire of motivation burns out, but the flame of discipline illuminates. He no longer needed the push of inspiring videos. What drove him was the calm of knowing what must be done. That's where transformation truly happens, when action becomes part of identity. He began to see difficult days as disguised teachers. If waking up early was hard, great, it was training. If his body was tired, even better, it was a test of character. Every obstacle became mental gym. Motivation is loud, self-discipline is silent. And in that silence, growth echoes. In the end, Raphael realized the myth of motivation was just a distraction for those who haven't decided who they are yet. When identity is clear, behavior is automatic. There's no space for, "Let's see if it works." There's only the commitment to continue. And that mental clarity separates the dreamers from the doers. Each act repeated, without depending on motivation, fed something inside him, an unshakable calm. It was as if an old part of him was dying, and a new, solid one was being born. And just like that, without realizing it, he began his true journey, killing the old self so the new one could emerge. And that's where the next step begins, the awakening. Raphael always thought the problem was lack of motivation. He tried to change, but quit before change could take root. Every new habit began with excitement and ended in frustration. It was the perfect cycle of self-sabotage. Until one day, tired of feeling like a perpetual restarter, he realized the problem wasn't effort, it was identity. He was trying to act disciplined without first becoming disciplined. Reading a passage about Zen monks changed everything. They don't try to meditate, they simply meditate. It's not an activity, it's who they are. That was his shift. He realized self-discipline doesn't begin with action. It begins with identity. It's not what I do, but who I am. When you change the being, the doing follows naturally. Raphael started observing his failures with curiosity instead of guilt. Why did he quit so fast? Because he still saw himself as someone trying to improve. That innocent phrase was a prison. Those who try aren't. Those who are don't try, they just do. That's when his transformation began. Instead of fighting the old self, he built a new one. He realized consistency doesn't come from willpower, but from clarity about who you want to be. When you see yourself as a disciplined person, your actions automatically reflect that belief. It's like changing your mind's operating system. Raphael began repeating to himself every day, "I am disciplined. I am consistent. I am focused." The brain believes what it hears often enough. To solidify this new identity, he started with small commitments. Getting up at the first alarm, reading 10 pages a day, meditating 5 minutes. Simple but non-negotiable. The secret isn't starting big, it's starting right. Each small victory was proof that the new self was taking over. Progress became natural. His friends laughed, saying he was taking things too seriously. But Raphael knew that laughter was just an echo of mediocrity. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was trying to be free. Self-discipline isn't a performance. It's a quiet decision. And he decided never again to live enslaved by inconsistency. Every morning he kept his promise, and something new grew inside him, lightness. Because consistency kills guilt. You no longer have to justify or negotiate with laziness. Things just happen. That's the beauty of a self-sustaining system. When routine becomes part of who you are, effort disappears and self-respect blooms. Raphael applied this principle at work. Instead of waiting for inspiration to code, he scheduled blocks of deep focus. 2 hours, no distractions. No phone, no notifications. Just him and the code. The result was shocking. In 1 week, he produced what used to take a month. Self-discipline multiplied his time, not by magic, but through focus. This new rhythm brought clarity. He began to see time as energy, not minutes. Each distraction cost him part of his life, and he noticed how much energy he wasted on pointless decisions. Train today or tomorrow? Read now or later? So he did what monks do. Eliminated the internal debate. The decision was made before the day began. What's most curious is that, over time, effort decreased. What once felt impossible became automatic. That's the power of consistency. When you repeat something long enough, your brain transfers control to instinct. Raphael's transformation stopped being a project and became nature. It's like learning to ride a bike. Once balance is mastered, you never forget. But the change wasn't only external. Inside, something deeper was happening. He began to feel proud, not of results, but of integrity. Keeping promises to yourself is the highest form of self-respect. Self-discipline is, in truth, self-love in its most mature form. This new mindset reflected in every area. Raphael started caring for his body, nutrition, and finances. He built a morning ritual with 3 pillars: movement, silence, and reading. A short workout, light meditation, and 10 pages of a good book. Sometimes Atomic Habits, other times Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. He understood that the body is the temple of the mind, and the mind commands the body. Each habit became a reminder of the new self. Waking up early said, "I'm in control." Reading said, "I cultivate wisdom." Meditating said, "I master my focus." Small actions, big meanings. That's how identity is built. It's not about what you do occasionally. It's about what you do daily, even when no one's watching. When he looked back, the abyss between the old Raphael and the new one was enormous. Before, he sought shortcuts. Now he built roads. Before, he relied on emotion. Now he trusted structure. And the more he committed, the more natural transformation became. It was as if the old self were dissolving quietly. But awakening also brought discomfort. He began to notice how the world revolves around instant gratification. People want results without process. And he, now aware of consistency's value, felt like a foreigner on an impatient planet. Still, he stayed focused. Because once you awaken, you can never go back to sleep. Raphael's focus became an example. His co-workers asked how he maintained so much discipline. He smiled and said, "I don't maintain it, I am it." That phrase summed it all up. When identity aligns with purpose, effort turns into peace. That's when action stops being obligation and becomes natural expression of who you are. And thus, the awakening solidified. Raphael no longer sought motivation, he sought coherence. The old self still whispered sometimes, trying to lure him back, but now he knew the truth. Change is irreversible. And on the horizon awaited the next lesson, the secret monks had guarded for centuries about unbreakable discipline. Zen monks live at a rhythm that defies the modern world. They wake up at 3:30 a.m. every single day, without exception. There's no snooze button, no mental negotiation. For them, the day begins when the bell rings. Self-discipline isn't effort, it's an extension of identity. The body simply obeys what the mind already decided. That simplicity is the real source of strength. Raphael was fascinated by this. He always believed discipline was a fight against himself, but now he learned it's actually an inner agreement. Monks don't decide daily whether to act. They decided long ago. Consistency comes from the absence of debate. There's no fatigue when there's no doubt. And in that clarity, focus blooms. The human brain burns energy with every decision. That's why many people feel exhausted before the day even starts. Monks remove that burden through fixed rituals. Wake, meditate, study, work. Raphael adapted this to his urban life. He created sacred hours. 5 a.m. was no longer a choice. It was who he was. That simple shift reordered his world. At first, waking early felt like torture. The body complained, sleep called, excuses multiplied. But he remembered the monks. Don't think. Just rise. And so he did. Over time, his body adjusted. Consistency defeated resistance. Each morning became a silent victory over his old self. Small victories build confidence, and confidence builds character. Monks understand that the mind needs clear commands. That's why their practices are non-negotiable. They don't debate with weather, mood, or time. They simply execute. Raphael learned that self-discipline is a language the body understands better than words. Each action, without hesitation, taught his brain to trust himself. Neuroscience confirms what monks have always known. When a commitment is public and identity-based, the brain treats failure as a threat to survival. Raphael used that insight. He told friends he'd wake early every day. Suddenly, quitting became more painful than continuing. Transformation thrived through accountability. This change may seem small, but it's powerful. The fear of failure becomes fuel when your identity is at stake. The human brain is wired to protect who we believe we are. So when you declare yourself disciplined, your body fights to maintain that belief. Raphael turned commitment into armor. Self-discipline became self-preservation. He also discovered consistency is contagious. Watching his determination, co-workers began changing their routines. One started running. Another began reading mornings. Without trying, Raphael became a reference point. It's strange how individual focus can awaken collective will. Silent example speaks louder than advice. In a short time, waking up early became active meditation. The silence of dawn turned into a mirror. He observed his thoughts before the world awoke. That moment of pure focus became his invisible temple. And in that space between sleep and day, he could feel transformation happening. Slow but deep, like roots spreading underground. Monks teach that the secret isn't resisting chaos, but creating order within it. Raphael realized he didn't need to escape the city to find peace. He just had to build an inner monastery. His routine became his spiritual practice. Reading, training, and working with purpose became modern forms of meditation. The outer world no longer dictated his rhythm. This new lifestyle revealed a power he never knew, the energy of consistency. By eliminating inner debate, he had energy left for what truly mattered. He produced more, rested better, and even his emotions stabilized. Body and mind began working together as allies. Discipline stopped being a burden and became freedom. Raphael started studying the basal ganglia, the brain region responsible for automatic habits. He discovered that when we repeat an action in the same context, the brain transfers it there, saving energy. It was exactly what monks had done for centuries. Self-discipline became natural. The body did the work, the mind just observed. Over time, the line between effort and pleasure disappeared. Waking early was no longer sacrifice, it was identity. He felt strange skipping the ritual, as if betraying his essence. That's the power of transformation. Behavior stops being obligation and becomes expression. I have to turns into this is who I am. Such focus impressed everyone around him. People asked for his secret, expecting a magic formula. He simply replied, "There is no secret, only commitment." And it was true. Consistency is the simplest, yet most underestimated form of magic. It turns mortals into masters, if they're willing to repeat the basics until it becomes part of the soul. Raphael realized true luxury isn't sleeping late, it's waking in peace. Peace exists only when body and mind align with identity. Each dawn was a reminder of who he'd become. Each sunrise, a silent renewal of commitment. The cycle of discipline renewed itself, day after day. The old Raphael would have quit long ago, but this new one couldn't imagine stopping. The process itself had become joyful. He understood the monk's secret isn't about rigidity, but harmony. Self-discipline isn't punishment. It's the music that keeps chaos in tune. And once you learn to dance to that rhythm, you never forget the beat. And in that harmony, Raphael discovered his next challenge, protecting this new lifestyle from modern distractions. Because waking early means nothing if the rest of the day is consumed by noise. The next step was clear: to create sacred, non-negotiable hours of absolute focus. Raphael discovered that freedom isn't doing what you want, it's mastering what must be done. That's why he created his non-negotiable hours, sacred blocks of time where nothing, absolutely nothing, could interfere. At 5 in the morning, while the world still slept, he was already moving. That hour became his temple, where self-discipline met silence. He realized those who control the first hours of the day control the entire day. Most people start reacting: notifications, messages, demands. Raphael chose to start creating. The first act of the day defines your identity. While others chase time, he shaped it. And in that subtle control, his transformation grew stronger. At first, it seemed excessive, but soon he saw that every small, irrelevant choice, what to wear, what to eat, what to do first, drained mental energy. So he simplified everything. Clothes prepared the night before, coffee ready, tasks pre-planned. This eliminated decision fatigue. Consistency cannot thrive in chaos. It is born from structure. These hours became a pact. No social media, no idle talk, no distractions. Only absolute focus. He learned to guard his attention like treasure. And it is treasure. Attention is the new wealth of the century. Whoever wastes focus, wastes life. Raphael preferred investing his mornings in himself, knowing the return was infinite. During this time, he performed a fixed ritual: 20 push-ups, 10 minutes of meditation, and reading something that elevated his mind. Sometimes the Daily Stoic, sometimes Think and Grow Rich. The book didn't matter, repetition did. Body and mind met in harmony through routine. It was like tuning an instrument before the day's symphony. The secret was self-discipline, treating these hours as unmissable appointments, a meeting with destiny itself. No setback was strong enough to break that pact. And curiously, the more non-negotiable his schedule became, the freer he felt. Because real freedom is the absence of regret. Many confuse rigidity with imprisonment. Raphael understood his non-negotiable hours weren't prison, they were protection. They guarded his energy, focus, and sanity. When you decide what's non-negotiable, the world adjusts. People respect those who respect their own time. A disciplined identity inspires trust. He also noticed something interesting. The more organized you are, the fewer surprises you face. Consistency creates predictability, and predictability brings peace. Raphael's mornings became so structured that he began waking before the alarm. The body knew what to do. When mind and routine align, effort disappears. One morning, while doing his push-ups, he thought, "The body is the mirror of the mind." And he was right. The way you move reflects the way you think. A disciplined body is only the reflection of an organized mind. Self-discipline doesn't live in muscles. It lives in invisible decisions made when no one's watching. Those hours also became his mental lab. He tested ideas, wrote thoughts, reviewed goals. Not mechanically, but like a craftsman shaping destiny. The focus during those hours was absolute, and the silence inspiring. It was impressive how 2 well-used hours could equal 12 wasted in distraction. Raphael learned to say no gracefully. Saying no to outside noise meant saying yes to purpose. The modern world worships speed, but he preferred precision. He knew that running fast means nothing if you're headed nowhere. And that clarity came from those sacred hours. There, he reconnected with his identity. Self-discipline taught him that consistency isn't monotony, it's mastery. Every repetition was an invisible sculpture being carved within him. Friends said he was turning robotic, but he knew he was becoming free. Chaos is for those without a plan. He had one, simple yet unbreakable. Those hours even cured his anxiety. Before, his mind was in constant overdrive. Now he began the day with focus, clarity, and direction. The more disciplined he became, the more confident he felt. The inner transformation was visible. The restless man had become calm. And calmness is the highest form of power. He realized the non-negotiable hours weren't just for doing more, but for being more. It was sacred time to strengthen the mind, nurture the soul, and align his compass. While the world chased shortcuts, Raphael grew roots. Every deep root bears long-lasting fruit. Consistency is patience turned into habit. Over time, discipline stopped being an exercise and became a state of being. Raphael no longer tried to keep his routine. He simply lived it. Focus became as natural as breathing. That's what separates the disciplined from the distracted. One decides, the other hesitates. And hesitation kills greatness. Those sacred hours taught him that the world doesn't respect doubt. The world respects rhythm, purpose, and presence. Raphael realized that mastering your mornings means mastering your story. Every sunrise was a reminder of who he'd become. The man who once ran from alarms now ran toward them. But he also understood that discipline alone isn't enough. Repetition without meaning is just motion. The real power lies in understanding why each act matters. That's when Raphael discovered something profound. The secret power hidden in repetition itself. Raphael realized that repetition is the bridge between wanting and being. At first, it felt mechanical, almost dull. The same push-ups, the same reading, the same meditation, day after day. But that's when the magic began. Repetition, once seen as prison, became liberation. Self-discipline isn't about variety, it's about rhythm. And those who master rhythm, master results. His friends mocked him, calling him a spiritual robot. They didn't see that the secret was consistency, repeating the basics until they became second nature. While the world chased novelty, he pursued depth. And that's what separates the distracted from the disciplined. Success rarely comes from something new. It comes from doing the old, without failing. Science backs it up. Researchers at MIT found that when you repeat an action in the same context, the brain moves that behavior into the basal ganglia, the habit center. The more you repeat, the less energy you need to continue. Raphael wasn't just exercising. He was rewiring his mind. He realized every repetition was a silent vote for his new identity. Each time he woke early, he was saying, I am disciplined. Each time he read, I am focused. Each time he persisted, I am consistent. Self-discipline stopped being effort and became self-definition. It was transformation happening in real time, one act at a time. At first, the mind resisted. It wanted change but hated monotony. That's the trap of the modern ego, confusing stimulation with progress. Raphael learned that true evolution is silent. It's waking and doing the same thing, with more presence, more purpose. The beauty is in the detail. Consistency is the art of improving 1 millimeter per day. He applied this concept to his career. Every day, he reviewed one old line of code just to see how he could improve it. It seemed trivial, but within months his technical skill had doubled. The same applied to his training, his reading, even his communication. Repetition with focus is the secret ingredient of mastery. Repetition also revealed something spiritual. The more he repeated, the more presence he found in the small things. Brewing coffee became meditation. Making the bed became a symbol of internal order. Self-discipline turned the ordinary into sacred. When the body learns the ritual, the mind is free to contemplate. That's the power of being fully present in the simple. But there's one detail few notice. Repeating doesn't mean doing it mechanically. It means repeating with awareness, seeing the same act through new eyes. The monks call this the beginner's mind. Raphael learned to keep freshness in routine, to find beauty in predictability. And the more he repeated, the more grateful he became. Consistency creates confidence. Confidence builds clarity. And clarity creates power. Every repetition built a foundation for faster, more decisive action. Raphael became more productive without rushing. He did less, but with more intention. That's what separates amateurs from masters. Amateurs chase intensity. Masters chase permanence. One of people's biggest mistakes is confusing variety with evolution. They want to change workouts every week, plans every Monday, books every few chapters. Raphael did the opposite. He picked a few pillars and kept them. That simplicity gave him depth. Self-discipline is what turns repetition into art. Repetition also reshaped his perception of time. Doing the same things daily made him notice details he'd never seen before. Raphael became aware of his breathing, the morning sounds, the smell of coffee. Everything became more vivid. He discovered that transformation doesn't come from changing scenery, but from changing perception. One morning, he realized something powerful. Boredom is the mind's test. Only those who cross boredom reach mastery. That's where most people quit, when novelty fades. But the master continues. Because the master doesn't seek emotion, he seeks evolution. And that's when self-discipline turns into practical faith. Consistency is like water dripping on stone, invisible day by day, but unstoppable over time. Raphael realized he didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Just continuing was victory enough. Repetition isn't limitation. It's freedom from the impulse to start over. Each repetition distanced him from doubt and brought him closer to truth. But there was still a fragile point: interruptions. Raphael noticed his strength disappeared whenever he broke the cycle, even for a day. He understood that true discipline isn't perfection, it's continuity. And that's when he learned the next, most valuable lesson of all. Practice must have no gaps. Raphael learned one of the hardest truths of self-discipline. What destroys consistency isn't laziness, it's interruption. He realized progress dies in pauses. One day off feels harmless, but it's a crack in the foundation. Consistency is like a river. If it stops flowing, it's no longer a river. The secret is to keep it moving, even slowly. Before, when he failed, Raphael restarted from zero. It was like climbing stairs and tumbling down after one misstep. Now he acted differently. On hard days, he didn't stop. He just slowed down. If he couldn't do everything, he did the minimum. 10 push-ups instead of 20. 5 minutes of reading instead of 10. But he did it. That kept the current alive. That simple strategy transformed his mindset. He understood that self-discipline isn't rigidity, it's continuity. Perfectionism is consistency's enemy. People believe discipline means doing everything perfectly, but in truth, it means never letting movement die. Even monks have bad days, but they never stop practicing. Raphael applied this everywhere. Workouts, study, work. If he couldn't give 100%, he gave 30%, but never 0%. That minimum commitment preserved his identity. Every act, no matter how small, told his brain, "We're still disciplined." Transformation happens in those imperfect days, when you choose to continue. Real life is unpredictable: trips, sickness, emotions, surprises. But self-discipline doesn't depend on scenery, it depends on decision. Raphael realized people's mistake is waiting for the perfect moment. It doesn't exist, only now does. And consistency turns now into progress. Even in slow motion, the river flows. He developed what he called the minimum viable version of every habit, his safety net. On chaotic days, he had a simple plan. Read 1 page, meditate 2 minutes, take 1 deep breath, and move on. That kept rhythm alive. And the brain loves rhythm. Rhythm builds predictability, and predictability builds peace. One night, after an exhausting day, he thought about skipping his workout. He was tired, frustrated, full of excuses. But then he remembered the monks. They never ask if, only how. So he trained 10 minutes, sweated, breathed, slept. The next morning, he felt invincible. The pride of keeping his word crushed any laziness. This taught him that self-discipline is built more on bad days than good ones. On good days, action is easy. On bad days, character is forged. Consistency is an invisible muscle. It grows under resistance. Raphael began seeing obstacles as mental gym. Every challenge was a chance to reinforce identity. He also learned that continuous practice doesn't mean no rest. Rest is part of transformation, as long as it's intentional. The problem is rest disguised as escape. Raphael learned to rest with purpose. Light walks, calm reading, quiet meditation. Stop the body, not the mind. That's how the river keeps flowing. This mindset changed his relationship with mistakes. Before, he felt guilty for every slip. Now, he saw mistakes as part of the dance. What mattered was not staying still. Guilt paralyzes, continuity frees. True self-discipline is resilient, not perfect. That lightness made him advance faster, with less friction. Over time, he noticed something curious. The more he practiced without gaps, the easier it became to restart. Consistency built an internal recovery mechanism. He no longer needed motivation to get back. The habit pulled him naturally. It was as if the new self refused to stay still. Identity called him back into motion. Gapless practice also brought emotional stability. Raphael became predictable to himself, and predictability creates trust. He knew he could count on himself, even on the worst days. That quiet confidence is the true power of self-discipline. When you trust yourself, the world stops feeling so threatening. He began to see discipline as a flow of energy. Each action fed the next. Reading fueled focus, focus fueled action, action fueled confidence. It was a virtuous cycle powered by consistency. And when the cycle stays alive, transformation becomes inevitable. Continuity is the engine of lasting change. One day, while meditating, he thought, interruption is the real enemy. Not tiredness, not lack of time, the break in the flow. Body and mind love continuity. Everything that flows lives. Everything that stops dies. That realization became his mantra, and he decided, never again would he let his river dry up. He began to see the world differently. People spoke of starting over, as if it were an achievement, but Raphael knew. Those who keep restarting never progress. They move in circles. The secret is never stopping long enough to need to restart. Self-discipline is the art of staying in motion. With that, he found a new serenity. The once anxious mind now flowed in peace. He no longer sought perfection, only continuity. Progress was constant, even when invisible. It was like watching a tree grow, slow, but unstoppable. And in that serenity, Raphael learned the next great lesson. Foresee obstacles before they appear. After months of uninterrupted practice, Raphael reached a new level of mental maturity. He no longer waited for problems to appear. He anticipated them. He understood that self-discipline is also strategy. Monks call this prevention of distraction. It's thinking before chaos, planning before stress. When you create pre-solutions, you don't rely on willpower. You rely on structure. He began mapping his fall triggers. He knew he felt sleepy after lunch, so he planned a short walk to reactivate the body. He knew his phone stole his focus, so he left it in another room during his non-negotiable hours. Those small preventions eliminated dozens of mental battles. Consistency thrives when the environment supports it. This strategy made him see that discipline isn't only about what you do, but also about what you avoid. Mastery lies more in eliminating temptations than in resisting them. He turned his environment into an ally. Tidy desk, strategic alarms, visual reminders. Each detail strengthened the identity of someone living with purpose and clarity. Raphael applied this mindset to bigger decisions too. He made a simple rule. If something threatens his focus, he decides about it in advance. Before social events, he set limits: when to leave, what to drink, what not to discuss. It saved mental energy and avoided regret. Planning is self-control in disguise. Studies at Yale showed exactly that. When you decide beforehand how to handle obstacles, you reduce mental fatigue. Raphael called it mental armor. He knew fatigue doesn't come from action, but indecision. Having clarity before chaos is self-discipline's greatest gift. He built a small, nightly ritual to prepare for tomorrow. He asked himself 3 questions. What could stop me tomorrow? How can I prevent it? What can I set up tonight to make it easier? Those simple questions prevented delays, stress, and impulse decisions. Consistency begins with planning. Improvisation is discipline's silent enemy. The practice of pre-solutions taught him the value of calm. He no longer reacted to problems. He observed them, like a strategist moving chess pieces with serenity. His focus was like water, adaptable, yet firm. That peace came from knowing that even if things went wrong, he was ready. This mindset freed him from guilt. Planning is acceptance that mistakes happen, and preparing for them is humility. Raphael realized perfection is arrogance disguised as effort. The true master prepares not for success, but for chaos. Self-discipline isn't rigidity. It's intelligent flexibility. He started using the formula. If X happens, I'll do Y. Simple but powerful. If I lose focus, I'll take a breathing pause. If I feel discouraged, I'll recall my purpose. If it rains, I'll train at home. These pre-solutions turn the impossible into inevitable. When the path is planned, transformation becomes natural. Over time, this ability to anticipate became instinct. Raphael no longer had to write everything down. Strategic thinking became automatic. It was like driving, first conscious, then reflex. The consistency of planning every day made his brain operate preventively. And prevention is always lighter than correction. This new way of thinking even helped his finances. Instead of waiting for emergencies, he built reserves. He separated part of his income for unforeseen events, another for investments. Self-discipline in money matters protected him from anxiety, because knowing you're prepared brings a peace no fortune can buy. Predictability creates confidence. He also applied it to relationships. Before, he got irritated with lateness or useless arguments. Now, he predicted behaviors. He prepared emotionally for tough meetings. When something went wrong, his answers were ready, calm, respectful, firm. That's emotional focus. Transformation isn't just physical, it's mental and relational. With his maturity, Raphael stopped being reactive. He no longer ran to put out fires. He prevented them. That freed an enormous amount of energy. He could think more, create more, live better. Self-discipline wasn't a burden anymore. It was invisible armor. But preparation didn't make him paranoid. On the contrary, it brought lightness. When you trust the plan, fear loses ground. Raphael lived with the calm of someone ready for the worst, but expecting the best. That peace is the mark of a mind aligned with identity. The consistency of planning kept him far from relapse. He used to say, "Failure starts the day before." And he was right. When you don't prepare, you're already setting the stage for error. That's why every night was an investment in tomorrow. Transformation worked behind the scenes, invisible but powerful. Raphael realized wisdom isn't about predicting everything, but preparing enough to never be caught off guard. That mindset made him confident, less anxious. He didn't need to control the world, only his response to it. And that's what defines a disciplined man. Yet, even with all the structure, Raphael knew true self-discipline demanded something deeper. Because after planning, repeating, and acting, there comes a point when change stops being behavior and becomes essence. It was time to face the ultimate stage of transformation, the death of the old self and the birth of a new identity. After 90 days of uninterrupted practice, Raphael was no longer the same. Routine, once forced, had become instinct. He no longer thought about whether to act. He just acted. What began as exercise became essence. Self-discipline stopped being behavior and became identity. And quietly, the old Raphael began to die. The process wasn't beautiful. Death never is. It was an internal war between comfort and consciousness. The old self screamed for rest, distraction, indulgence. But the new stayed firm, fueled by consistency. The pain was only the echo of transformation. Each repeated act buried an old habit deeper. Friends noticed. They said he was different, cold, obsessed. But Raphael knew. They didn't see obsession, they saw focus. The difference was clarity. Transformation had made him dangerous, not to others, but to mediocrity itself. The average man inside him was gone. Over time, temptations lost power. The same distractions that used to enslave him now felt childish. Netflix, parties, laziness, none of it tasted the same. Because the new self had developed a refined appetite, the taste for evolution. Once you experience real self-discipline, nothing else satisfies. He understood the old self doesn't die all at once. It dies choice by choice. Just this once is the old voice trying to resurrect. But Raphael no longer negotiated. Consistency protected him. Constant repetition built an inner fortress against weakness. This symbolic death brought indescribable freedom. He no longer fought against himself. The old Raphael had been the enemy. The new one was commander. Self-discipline had unified his inner forces. There was no longer conflict, only direction. And direction turns effort into destiny. One morning, looking in the mirror, he saw something simple yet profound. The same face, but different eyes. They carried purpose, not doubt. He had traded insecurity for conviction. The disciplined identity doesn't seek approval. It radiates confidence. The world feels it when you know who you are. The new Raphael no longer needed praise. He didn't act for recognition. He acted for coherence. Self-discipline had made him emotionally self-sufficient. He worked in silence, and results spoke for him. Transformation no longer needed proof. It was visible in every gesture, every choice. The most curious thing was that this stronger version wasn't fueled by anger, but peace. His focus, once tense, had become natural. Consistency had shaped a calm, almost stoic mind. Raphael realized true power is silent. Those who master themselves don't need to dominate anyone else. That peace didn't come from meditation, but from commitment. Every fulfilled act was a vow with his own soul. Self-discipline connected him to something greater, self-respect. When you keep your promises to yourself, no external noise can shake you. Even if the whole world disagrees, inside, everything feels right. Over time, he began to feel compassion for those still trapped in their old selves. He remembered what it was like to live in the cycle of guilt and procrastination. So he didn't judge, he inspired. His identity became example. And that's the peak of transformation, when your change begins to change others. He realized killing the old self is a daily act. The past tries to revive every time you're tired or uncertain. But Raphael had a ritual now. Breathe. Remember who you are. That simple phrase reconnected him to self-discipline. Because the death of the old isn't violence, it's vigilance. The monks call it the second life, the moment the being awakens to purpose. Raphael felt it in every cell. He no longer lived in the autopilot of his past. His consistency was his armor, his focus his sword, and his calm his shield. The inner warrior had awoken. But he also knew rebirth isn't an ending, it's a beginning. The new self requires maintenance, like a temple that must be cleaned daily. Self-discipline isn't the destination, it's the eternal journey of preserving who you've become. Those who stop evolving start dying again. That awareness brought humility. Raphael no longer called himself disciplined, only in constant practice. Because those who truly understand transformation know it never ends. There's always another layer of self to polish. The man who renews himself never fears time. In the end, Raphael understood discipline isn't about conquering the world. It's about conquering your reflection. It's about looking at yourself and realizing you are the sum of the promises you kept. Self-discipline is the tomb of the old and the cradle of the new. It's dying to weakness and being reborn in strength. And so, in the silence of an ordinary morning, Raphael understood. The old self was gone. The reborn identity needed no proof. It simply existed. Firm, centered, unshakable. Transformation was complete, but never finished. Because true discipline is eternal. And now, the world was about to meet the name of this new era. Unbreakable discipline. The death of the old you. If you've come this far, it's because something inside you has already begun to change. It wasn't just what you heard. It was what you felt. Deep down, you know the old you is dying. And that's okay. That death is necessary. Self-discipline isn't punishment, it's rebirth. It's when you stop being a slave to excuses and become the master of your actions. The truth is simple. No one is coming to save you. Not luck, not motivation, not chance. Only you, with your consistency, your focus, your willingness to keep going when tired. That's what separates those who talk about change from those who actually change. And today, you chose the right side. But understand, this is only the first stage. Transformation doesn't end when the audio stops. It starts now, in real life, in the next minute, in the next decision. Every act, every morning, every choice will be the field where the new you proves worthy of the name Unbreakable. From now on, nothing will be hard, only necessary. The disciplined man doesn't wait for the perfect moment. He creates it. And if he fails, he begins again. If he falls, he rises. That's the silent strength of self-discipline. Not shouting louder, but continuing in silence. Now look around. How many people still sleepwalk through life, complaining, circling, trapped in the same loops you just broke. You were chosen, not by luck, but by decision. So protect this flame. Reinforce your identity. Continue. And when you feel like quitting, come back here. Listen again. Reignite what's already yours by right. The disciplined mind is indestructible. The body follows the mind's command, and life inevitably bends before those who don't give up. That is your new truth. That is your new nature. From now on, you don't just live, you build. Every day. In silence. With purpose. And if this content awakens something in you, if at any moment it made you think, reflect, or want to act, then subscribe now. Turn on notifications and continue this journey with me. Because here, every day, you'll find knowledge, mindset, and inspiration to strengthen your self-discipline and protect your new self. The choice is yours. Go back to sleep or stay awake. And if you chose to stay awake, welcome to the Brotherhood of the Unbreakable. Welcome to the era of unbreakable discipline.